Hello, hello. We're back once again with some more Supreme Court cases in our Civics series. Today, we're going to talk about two more Supreme Court cases that have defined American government and American history. The first one that we're going to talk about today is the Miranda case, Miranda versus Arizona, and it happened in 1966. And basically, what happened was this guy was arrested for something, and he was never informed of his right to not incriminate himself. And so he did. And then he sued saying, hey, I was never informed that I had the ability to not tattle on myself, basically. And so I feel like my rights have been violated. And the Supreme Court ruled that the Fifth Amendment protects defendants from, incriminating themselves. And if they haven't been told their right to do that specifically, then their rights are still protected. So basically, what the Supreme Court said was because he had never been notified that he had the right to not incriminate himself, anything that he had said to incriminate himself wasn't good in court anymore, because it was basically like he had been kind of forced or like tricked into incriminating himself because he didn't know his own rights. So now, because of that, there's what's called the Miranda Warning, or being Miranda'd. And it's something that you'd see on like every cop show that you've ever watched, right? Whenever they arrest someone, they're always said, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney, right? There's this huge long warning that police officers have to know now, because if they don't say it, and then they have somebody, if they collect evidence from this person afterwards, it's not admissible in court anymore, because they can say, I wasn't read my rights. I wasn't aware that I wasn't allowed to talk. None of this is okay anymore. So you have to know. So now police officers have to tell you your rights while they're arresting you, because otherwise you can plead that you weren't, and you can get dismissed from whatever crime they're trying to get you on. Now, recently in 2010, there was a new Supreme Court case called the Tompkins case, and that clarified, saying that suspects that were aware of their rights but choose not to invoke them, what they say can still be used as evidence. So basically, what this Tompkins case did was kind of muddy the waters here. Now, before the Tompkins case, if you hadn't been read your rights, then it assumed that you didn't know them. But now, due to the Tompkins case, they can say that if you do know your rights, and even if they don't necessarily tell you, if they can prove that you knew about your rights prior to whatever, it's all still admissible in court. And now there's kind of a legal debate over whether the Tompkins case kind of shredded the Miranda case, because now there's a lot more of a gray area when it comes to, does this person know their rights, or do they not? And so it's not a guaranteed safeguard anymore. There's wiggle room now. And so some legal scholars have said that those protections have kind of been erased because of this case. So things are happening. Laws are changing. Now, the last case we're going to talk about in this video is called the Tinker case, and that happened in 1969. And this one was about student protests in schools. Basically, this guy named Tinker, things were going on. This was like the time of Vietnam and all of that. And so he was protesting at his school, and he wasn't doing anything particularly disruptive. I believe he was wearing like an armband in school. And the school basically said, no, you can't do that. And they suspended him for protesting at school. They're like, yep, we're a school. We have the right to limit your freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. That was their argument. Well, Tinker sued, saying, I may be a student, I may be a minor, but I still have my rights. And the Supreme Court actually ruled in the favor of this kid, basically saying that students can protest at school, and schools don't have the right to take away your First Amendment rights right off the bat, right? They don't have the automatic right to take away those rights from you. Now, they did create what's called the Tinker test, and what that basically means is if you're going to protest at school, you have to make sure that your protest does not disrupt the educational environment of your school. And that's what the Tinker test is. So for instance, let's say your protest is to Like back when I was in high school, people on National Coming Out Day would wear like tape over their mouths. That was an acceptable form of the Tinker Test, right? I would pass the Tinker Test because it doesn't necessarily ruin the educational environment. You're still able to participate and be in class. No one's being harmed, threatened, whatever, right? That's fine. Now, if your form of demonstration was something different that would disrupt the school day, like, I don't know, like pulling the fire alarm in the middle of the day or doing something like that, now that would be considered not okay, right? That kind of freedom of speech would be limited because it does not pass the Tinker Test. You've officially disrupted the school environment, so it can no longer do its educational purpose. So now that's what student protest is kind of tested on when it comes before the courts. Does it pass the Tinker Test? And that comes into effect in other ways too. Schools can limit your speech in other ways, right? You can't say certain things at school because it harms the learning environment. You can't wear certain things at school. Like, you know, how every school has like a rule now that you can't have like depictions of alcohol or drugs on your shirts when you're walking around in class. And the school is allowed to do that because it's hurting the learning environment. That's another way that freedom of speech can be limited, and that's all kind of rolled up into this Tinker Test. So if you're planning on protesting, think about that when you're planning it out. It's important to do. So those are our two cases today. There's the Miranda case, which talks about how you have to be read your rights, and that has had a really big effect on how law enforcement handles things in our country. And then the Tinker case, which is all about student protest and how much a school can limit your freedoms, especially your First Amendment freedoms in school. So those are two big ones. Thank you again for watching. Hope you got something out of this. Next time, will be one of two of our last Supreme Court cases. And then after that, we'll move on to elections and get all the way down into our like state and city governments. Thank you so much again for watching. Have a great day.